Arsenal versus Brentford, and guys, this is the preview. And this is one of those games that you learn a lot about yourself. This game, we're going to know a lot about Arsenal. It's not a game where we're the freshest, a game where you're having injuries to key players. You've got teams coming back, players coming back who are not exactly on form. And you've got a Brentford team that has got so many qualities that can cause Arsenal problems. And today I'm going to look at something that is very understated about this game that could actually flip this matchup. So we're going to get into this preview. You want to stick around, for the rest of this. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button and share this with as many Arsenal fans as possible because we are going into the Arsenal versus Brentford preview. Let's get into it. Okay, guys. Arsenal are coming into this game after a frustrating and bruising 1-1 game against Chelsea. A match where there was so much physicality, so much cheap fouls. Arsenal got as many yellow cards in as many minutes in this game, and it wasn't that sort of game for Arsenal. Check out my post reaction for the Arsenal versus Chelsea game. Arsenal is still unbeaten in the league. After we lost to Liverpool, we've got to put that caveat in. But meanwhile, Brentford have been doing some really good things in the league so far. They just beat Burnley at the GTEC Stadium. It was an incredible game that they played. A lot of things in that game, I picked up just looking at and Brentford as well. And they also beat Liverpool, So of course I know there's a narrative about Liverpool also, but they are capable of putting in that one-off performance against top teams. And so this is something that we absolutely have to be careful about. Man City struggled to beat this team, even though I know that was away from home. But they are dangerous, they're unpredictable, and they're fearless. And right now, this is where Arsenal stand. Trossard is out, Gabriel's out for weeks. We've got Gyökeres who's coming back. Odegaard is fit again. Havertz, close, wasn't on the bench. Jesus was on the bench against Chelsea. Martinelli and Madueke are fit and available again, and Merino has played a lot of games. So put a pin in that because we're going to come back to that in a second. Because Mikel Arteta is going to have to make some decisions in this game. Does he rotate the squad, knowing what's coming ahead in December? December is going to be grueling for Arsenal because we've got a lot of cup games that are coming back again, some very difficult games. We're playing Aston Villa twice, Crystal Palace. These are games that are going to actually require the maximum amount of effort because of the way those teams play. And so for me, this is that one game that sits before all of those chaos that Mikel Arteta has got the ability to rotate and rotate very well. And we're going to get into that. There's lots going on. But this matchup is far more interesting than a lot of people, realize. Let's look at who Brentford really is. I was doing some research about Brentford and looking at, what Brentford has been doing over the last couple of games. They actually get lots of penalties. And the reason for this is because Brentford are very, very good at long throws. They're very good at creating chaos, especially with their set pieces, duels, collisions, scrambles. And when there's a lot of scrambling and there's a lot of chaos, it's inevitable that someone is going to do something they're not supposed to do in the box. And that's where they've got lots of penalties. And with Thiago, someone that can definitely bang that in. They're also set piece monsters. We are set piece kings as well. But Brentford are also very, very good at this. Coyote, for example, his long throws are a documented weapon. Think back of Rory Delap back in the Stoke days. He's equally that good. The way he launches this thing is absolutely ridiculous. And they use them like corners, right? I remember back in the day that people would actually take corners than long throws because of Rory Delap. And Thiago's movement is so good. I'm going to talk about him in a second, but it's something that he does that is absolutely brilliant. Um, and in attack, Thiago, 11 league goals. This is ridiculous, right? I don't think anyone is paying attention to him, but he's been scoring lots of goals. And I know there's been a few penalties in them, but the way that he moves is something that is to behold. The last player that I saw that moved like this was Jamie Vardy. And it's something particular that he does, that it's so interesting that we have to be very, very mindful of. And I'm going to touch on that. Then you've got Dango Watra. Um, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing the name properly. He's a handful, 1v1. He's relentless in transition. And then you've got Jensen and Damsgaard. These are players that, especially in that zone 14, if you give them space, they're going to be very dangerous. So when people say it's only Brentford, the reality is that the numbers do not back that assertion. This team is very, very dangerous, and they're uniquely dangerous as well. But here is where, I think that this game could be won or lost. I said I was going to talk about, Thiago. And one thing that Thiago does very well is blindside runs. And what that really is when a striker, runs, at the back of the nearest defender, to him who's been attracted by the ball. And you're going to see that in this graphic. So you just look at this graphic, you're going to see what Thiago is doing very well and how he's timed this run on the back blind side of this defender coming into the ball, and then striking home. This is something that he's very, very good at and something that we have to be watchful about, because if we let someone like Dango Ouattara, if we let him, take on and drift into the spaces, between Nkapie, and whoever it is that's going to play in the right back, because I'm going to talk about the way that Arsenal should start in this game. He could be running straight at Mosquera, and that's something that we don't want to do, right? But this game is going to be won or lost in a number of areas. The first place for me is going to be zone 14. This is Brentford's weak spot. If you look at the goal that they conceded against Brighton, after Minte had gone on against Hickey, absolutely isolated Hickey in that game. And this is a pattern that we can replicate. Why? Because we've seen us do this exact same thing against Spurs, where Eze drifted into the central, of that zone 14 and scored all of his goals from there. So it's something that Eze can do. And I think Eze will be important in this game as well. Odegaard receiving the ball between the lines, but getting it, especially on that right hand side, but then getting it to Eze, because I want Eze to play a little bit more central in this game. Martinelli would have to isolate Hickey. A lot of time, Madueke, will cut inside, and then Gyökeres would have to pin the center backs. This is where I think Arsenal can break Brentford open. The second thing is that Arsenal must avoid chaos. I've talked a little bit about this, about what Brentford is really good at doing. In terms of Brentford, they have the most penalties in one this season. Coyotes long throws. And then we've got to be careful not to concede dangerous free kicks, because the goal that Chelsea scored was on the back of a free kick that we cost. That was given, and then that eventually led to the corner, and we know what happened from there. So Arsenal cannot turn this into a wrestling match. If the game becomes emotional, we've seen what can happen in those games, Sunderland and Chelsea, then we get dragged into silly fouls, and Brentford can then get their oxygen. Another thing that's going to be important is second balls. Second balls in this game is something that Brentford absolutely lives for. They don't need possession. And actually, when you look at their possession stats, you actually see that they don't mind giving the possession back to the opposition team. What they need is loose balls. They need the deflections. They need those recycled throws. And we've got players who can actually cope in this. Zubimendi is very, very good at passing under pressure. So, this is something that we can actually use to stabilize our midfield. And if we can control this second phase, of the balls, and I think that Brentford is going to collapse. They're also a team that are not very good in the final couple minutes of the game. So Arsenal are going to have to be patient. I would rather that Arsenal score as quickly as we can, so that we can immediately, start to manage the game. You don't want this game dragging into the 60th minute without us, making the breakthrough. Now, there are a couple of matchups that I want to pick out in this game. The first one is Luis Kelly and Ouattara, right? I believe that Luis Kelly should start at left back in this game. I think that Calafiori has played a lot of games, and you could see that was beginning to tell on him in the Chelsea game. So you know what? I would treat this game as a cup game. And I will start Lewis Kelly at the back. I think that he can have the intelligence and the pace to be able to match Ouattara. Then the other matchup for me is going to be Hincapié and Thiago. Thiago has scored 11 goals. We said it already. Um, Nkapia is going to need to win his duels. He's going to need to win his duels against this player. And if he does that, I believe that Arsenal, can win this game. If he doesn't, there's going to be problem. And then, it's going to be what's going to be happening with Damsgaard in that middle of the park, and Eze. Eze can drift into the pocket to break down the Brentford shape. But I think this is also a mini battle that we need to win in this game. Now, I've talked a little bit about the Arsenal lineup. So let me tell you what I think Mikel Arteta should do going into this game. Like I said, we need to treat this game as a cup game because of the games that we've got going in December, and this is the opportunity to rest a couple of players. So, Raya in goal for me, I think that's not debated. You're gonna have to have Nkapie. I don't think that Saliba should be rushed, for this game. Let's build that partnership between Nkapie and Mosquera. So I think the two of them come back into this game. And to be fair, they didn't do much wrong in that Chelsea game. So you've got Nkapie, you've got Mosquera who are playing. Then I want to see Lewis Kelly on the left-hand side and White on the right-hand side. And then in the middle of the park, Zubimendi comes back in. I think he's very important to play. I know that there's a temptation for Norga to potentially come in because of his old club, but that's not how Mikel Arteta rolls. So I think Nogo will get some minutes in this game. But probably the game that's probably more important for Norgard is when we go and play away, at the GTEC Stadium. So Zubimendi plays this game. He starts, and then I want to see Odegaard and Eze. I think these two players, this is the kind of game that you start to sharpen up that chemistry, you start to sharpen up the dynamic between those two players. And what that means is that Declan Rice will sit on the bench. I think this is a game that you can rest Declan Rice in, play Odegaard, and then you can play Eze in the game. And then what happens? You now got Madueke. I think Madueke should start this game. I think Saka, this would be an opportunity to rest Saka. Give him a game, where he maybe comes in the second half, but remember, we've got Aston Villa, and it's a 12:30 kickoff on Saturday, and we're playing on Wednesday. So I think that, this is how we should balance the squad. And hey, you got this depth for a reason. So why are you afraid to use it? So I would say use this game as a game to give a lot of players momentum and a bit more, fluency. So I would say Martinelli on the left-hand side, Madueke on the right-hand side, and then you've got Gyökeres starting up front. Merino, I would say, get him on the bench. He's played so many games, recently. And that's something that we just need to be confident about this. Let's just go out there and use the squad and use them intelligently because we've got a really, really important game. And why this 11 for me? I think it protects against Brentford press. So it's not just about resting players, but I think these players are uniquely would allow us to resist that. And more importantly, it will create overloads in the midfield. I think that Lewis Kelly can come into that midfield and then he can help out, if Zubimendi is getting a little bit overshadowed. But also it targets Hickey's flank, right? Because that right hand side is an area that we can actually target for Brentford and we can get joy because he can be a little bit erratic in his play sometimes and is someone that you can get at. So I would like to see us take advantage of that. But he also gives, the likes of Madueke, as well. But more importantly, guys, it keeps Rice fresh for the December chaos. So, so important. And for me, this is that moment, guys, that we've been waiting for. We want to see a full game with Odegaard and Eze starting from the start of the game. And I think this is the game that we do just that. Listen, Odegaard is fit, Madueke is fit, Martinelli is fit. Brentford can't match this in 60 minutes, so we've got to use our superpower the best way that we can. And guys, this is where, prediction for me, I'm going to go with a 2-0 to Arsenal. I think we've got the capability of keeping Thiago quiet. A clean sheet, we return to clean sheet. We've not kept one in a while. And a moment of quality from Eze or Odegaard. And maybe a let go from Martinelli or Madueke. I think this game should be 3 points, right? Arsenal will need to manage the emotion. It was a very big, London derby. And again, this is another London derby as well. But that's my prediction, guys. Let me know what you guys think about what I've said about the tactics, where I think it'll be won or lost, predictions as well. Put that into the comment section. And I would love to hear from all of you. And please don't forget to like and subscribe the video. Appreciate all of you. And I'll see you, win, lose, or draw, when we do our pavilion debrief and we talk about 3 ups and we talk about 3 downs. I'll see you guys in the next one.